Welcome to The Journey with author, speaker, and evangelist Marlena Compston. Marlena seeks out guests that have a moving testimony to share in their faith journey. Marlena's faith call is to set the captives free, and she shares her faith along with hope in the Lord Jesus Christ. She is real, raw, and authentic. Marlena longs to give the opportunity for others to open up about their own struggles along with their victories. So please welcome the host of The Journey, Marlena Compston.
Welcome to The Journey. I'm Marlena Compston, and today we have a guest that is so bold and so brave to come forward and share her story of trauma. I want to encourage those of you that have had trauma in your past or are currently experiencing trauma to seek out help. I don't know if you're aware, but there is actually a suicide hotline. It is simply 988. You dial 988 just like you would 911. And there are counselors waiting that can chat with you and talk with you through difficult situations. I encourage you to seek out the Lord Jesus Christ. Heather and I both have, even through our darkest moments. But let's welcome her in today, and we're going to let her begin sharing her story. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Glad to see you. Like I said earlier, this is like the third time we've got to see each other, maybe second.
It is definitely the second or third for sure.
Yes, for sure. Well, I'm so glad to have you here today, and thank you for being willing to come forward and share your life's journey, Heather. And I'm just going to go ahead with our questions, and go ahead and describe your home life with your parents as a child.
Um, I lived in trauma. My childhood basically was either really, really good or really, really bad. I remember the first time ever being hit that I remember by my dad was I was 3 years old. And um, you just never knew. Every day you would wake up and just kind of be like, what kind of day am I going to have? Um, when I was 5 years old, we started trying to call the police and ask them to help us. They never, they would come to the house and they would talk to him and they would do what I would call walk around the block kind of thing. And they would say, "Oh, he promises he's never going to do it again." And of course, he did. And sometimes we got beat again um, that night, or we would have a whole week of it. It was just very traumatic. And what I know this sounds horrible, it's not even necessarily the beatings, but it was just living in the fear of what is going to happen that day. We could be going through a whole week of everything would be good, and then all of a sudden he would find, as silly as it is, he would find a dirty fork in the drawer, and he would all of a sudden that would be the night that we're all going to get beat. By the time I was 5 years old, he started locking us in our bedrooms. He put latches on the outside and turn the knobs around so that he could have control if we were getting out of control or he was having a really bad day and my mom was getting a really bad beating, so that we couldn't call the police or so that we wouldn't try to interfere. He would lock us in our rooms. And this just was an everyday life of figuring out, what kind of day we would have. By the time I was 5, I started just being out of the house as much as possible. So I would uh, go hang out with my friends, go roam the neighborhood, uh, because even at 5 years old, I knew this was something was off. I knew this was not a normal life, and um, by this just was a continual thing. I remember most of my beatings by the houses that we lived in.
Mm.
So I basically call it behind closed doors because it was. I remember the front door. I remember the house. I remember the things that happened in um, in that particular house. I grew up thinking, we moved around a lot because he was buying my mom new houses and she would get to decorate them and stuff. But I finally realized as I got older, we were moving around because the police were coming. So
Mm.
when the neighbors started asking questions, then that was the time to move to a new house. The worst beatings probably was when I was sixth and seventh grade. And that's when he started having me stripped down and I would be naked. So, I was already developed and everything by the sixth grade. And he would just beat me. And he always used a belt. And you learn at a very early age to cover up your face because you can cover up bruises anywhere on your body except for your face. And if it was summertime, we would wear long sleeves and long pants to cover up the bruises. Um, but I also never had friends come over, and I never had friends stay the night for fear that I just never knew what he would do. And I was always fearful somebody could get caught up in that, or somebody would just find out my secret because I would, even though I lived like this, my escape was school and friends and sports and band, and I just pretended as soon as I walked out that door that I had a whole different life. And that life that was happening behind closed doors, it wasn't my life, it was somebody else's life. And so it helped me just kind of change the narrative on my life.
And I call that compartmentalize. I learned to do that very early also. I
And,
just compartmentalized.
and most children in trauma, they do. And I didn't
Mm.
realize until I got older in life that that's exactly what I was doing, is because I was trying to uh, trying to put in a place like, I know this isn't right, I know this isn't the way life is supposed to be. And I knew that because I was fortunate that I had friends that came from great homes. And um, I had my kindergarten friend that we walked to kindergarten every day. uh, I'd go and just invite myself over there or to their house for dinner. His mom would be like, "Oh, we're going to have dinner." Okay, well, I'm staying for dinner because I just wanted to be a part of that family. I wanted to stay in their house. I didn't want to go back to my house.
You wanted to be in a safe environment. Can I ask you, did your dad have substance issues? Did he drink? Did he have addiction issues?
No, he did not drink. In fact, there would be times that he would um, possibly drink after he beat us, but never before. He never
Hmm.
did drugs. Um, and that's a question that we get asked often. And I don't know if it would be worse or better, or it's better that he didn't have one, but no, he never had a substance abuse.
And did you ever understand why he was so angry and doing that? Was that his history or? Was
As
he
far
just
as I know, it was not his history. He didn't know his father very well. He was raised by his mother was a teacher, and so she was very involved and out of the house. But his grandmother raised him, and so as far as I know, um, I don't know if he grew up in that, but
Mhm.
growing up and having my own kids now, that's not an excuse if you were.
Right. That's right. That's right. Um, I'm just thinking about, did you ever have a moment of feeling safe, Heather?
In my own house, no. Well, that's not true. In my eighth grade year, my mom finally got the nerve to. My older sister had already moved out of the house. My middle sister had a lot of problems and was in and out of juvenile hall and group homes and in trouble with the law. And I eighth grade, she decided it was time for him to get out. And she was secure enough. She had a great job. Um, in fact, she was working two jobs. I remember after probably a month or so, my mom and I being in a new place, that I finally realized that when you're a child growing up, see, when you're a child growing up in trauma, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, you don't just jump out of bed. You sit there for a moment and kind of listen to what the house is telling you. Is somebody already yelling? Is it quiet? Sometimes when you grow up in trauma, being in a house that is too quiet is just as scary as a house that has a lot of yelling and everything like that, because when it's too quiet, you feel like you're walking into something you don't know about. When there's yelling and screaming, then you kind of have an idea, I've got to protect myself, maybe I should just stay in my room, that type of thing. So um, my eighth grade year was probably the best year of my childhood, and I realized that I didn't have to live that way anymore. I realized that it was nice to not wake up and be scared, and just be able to get up and on a Saturday morning and watch cartoons, or get some cereal and eat some cereal and watch cartoons. So
Right. Right. Um, I know we have so much to unfold here. And your mom, she was experiencing abuse as well, correct?
she got it the worst. If he was beating her, there was no guarantee that we would get beat. So we would try to interfere. Sometimes we'd call the police. By the time I was 7 years old, we already knew that calling the police wasn't going to do us any. It wasn't going to help us. So we
And
stopped. But go
and
ahead.
it's shocking. It's shocking to think that as many
Back
times as you mentioned the police had been at your home, that they did nothing.
They
And then you,
didn't, and it is a little shocking. I mean, I know it's better today, but it's not necessarily 100% better.
right,
Small town America is still having problems, but um, it it was sad at that early age to realize we were just on our own. Nobody was coming to rescue us. We had to figure it out on our own. So when she was getting beat, sometimes we would just get out of the house, or so that we wouldn't get beat. But if we were getting beat, then she would always get beat afterwards, like it was her fault that he had to beat us because we were misbehaving or whatever the situation was.
that's devastating. We are going to go to a short break and continue this story, and we will be right back.
Thank you.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back. Our guest today is Heather Simon, and she is sharing what she and her family went through with the abuse of her father. And Heather, you were just mentioning that your dad had left the home and your mom was working 2 jobs and was providing, and that you finally, for a moment in your life, felt safe and like you had the freedom to, what you mentioned, just watch a cartoon or eat a bowl of cereal and know that you weren't going to be beaten with a belt. It's heartbreaking. So go ahead and let's go on down the story.
Mm, Eighth grade was truly just the best year of my childhood. I think I even had some friends over. We probably the happiest I had been my whole childhood. And then just right when my freshman year started, then um, I came walking out of the school, and my sister was there, and I'm like, "Why are you here?" And her response was, "Well, I'm moving back home, and did you hear Dad's moving back home too?" And so that was heartbreaking. I was very devastated at that time, and within just a few weeks, it started back up again.
Mm,
At this time, I was a little bit stronger and willing to stand up to him a little bit more. I knew what it was like to not be beat, and so I just started being more involved in everything. My sister had been a juvenile delinquent and lived and been in juvenile hall and group homes and stuff, and she came home because the group home she was in was started trafficking the girls. And so my mom had to go to court to get the judge to allow my sister to come home. It was her senior year of high school. And the judge only let her come home if my dad came home. Her probation officer even said there's abuse in the home, but he still said nope, unless he moves back home, we're not going to let her move back home. So that just started the whole thing. He started back beating her. He wasn't beating us as much, partly because we were making sure we were out of the house. My sister was getting counseling. Um, but just 3 weeks before my senior year of high school, my mom had got the courage to finally kick him out and try to file for divorce. But he made arrangements for her to meet him because I needed things. It was just another way for him to control the situation. He came after her one last time, and she fought back, and unfortunately, he died that evening. And then she was arrested for first degree murder. So now all of a sudden we're front page news, and my secret was out, and there was no hiding it. So I had to show up at my senior year of high school like I was fine. Everything was okay. It wasn't like my parents, people knew my dad was dead and my mom was in county jail because they set her original bond at $500,000. And it took us a couple of months to be able to get her out. Um, I already had a full ride scholarship. I was prepared to go off to school, and I just needed to make it through my senior year. Well, within a couple of months, I knew I wasn't going to make it. And so, about 6 months after the incident, I had attempted suicide. And I just had had enough. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. I was not, I thought my life was over. We were front page news. I had blown my scholarship by this time. I didn't know what I was going to do. And in all honesty, I just lost hope. I I found hope at 5 years old and knew that that was going to help save me. And I knew if I just kept dreaming and kept going and kept moving forward and building this other life that I wanted, that I could make it through it all. But unfortunately, just that time, all I saw was darkness, and I just didn't know how I could go on. And
You and I,
I'm
you and I both have been at that place where we just did not think anything would ever get better. And I know when I found myself there a couple of times, I was just exhausted. I was exhausted of even trying to hold my head up or
mhm.
get out of bed, much less try to do anything normal. And, I would have a few people say, get over it, just get over it. And it's not how that works. You and I both know. So, again, Heather and I are sharing that we understand. And if you are listening and this is the place that you are, or this is the place you've been, we are sitting here today to tell you that there is hope. Heather has not yet shared the story about knowing that God was with her at an early age, which she will share. That's sometimes it's all we can do is just hold on to just 1 ounce of hope. And the Lord Jesus Christ, as shocking as it sounds, he allowed it to happen. But Romans 8:28 says, "For all things work together for good to those that are called according to his purposes." And Heather can sit here today and share her devastating story. Not only did she just lose her dad, and Heather, you shared that all of you were actually glad he was gone, right? He could no longer hurt you.
We actually, the news came in a little weird. And in fact, that's how we found out was the news. The police never came to tell us that this was happening to our parents. And so my sister lived in San Diego. We all lived in California. And calling her and telling her, we were just actually like, well, he's gone. Okay. So we really thought that everything was going to turn out great. because, okay, well, he's gone. So now we get to start our lives over. We get to, you know, when I was locked in my bedroom at 5 years old, I had to come up with ways of how to get out of the house in case, um, the house caught on fire. That's when I started having conversations with God of, I know you're not making him do this. I know it's he's choosing to do this. I started having those conversations with him again as a way to just build a whole different life. And that night when that happened, it, as sad as it sounds, it was a relief. It was a relief to not have to worry about what he's going to do to us anymore. That it was that chapter of our lives was finally over.
And you can only imagine where your mom's head was at. Here she was. They obviously were in an altercation and he died. She was she was not only protecting herself for once, but she ultimately was protecting her children, which it sounds
And
like she wasn't able to do.
in actuality, it took her quite a while to realize that he had died. So when we
Yeah,
finally got to speak with her, when she finally made her call, um, she kept telling the police, "You need to go protect my daughters. He's coming after my daughters. He's going to hurt them. You need to go. He's going to come after me. Just can I go and I'll get out of town. I'll go pick up my daughters. We'll get out of town. We'll go to my older daughters because my oldest sister just had a baby." And so we were very, it took her a while. We had to keep telling her, no, he's dead. He's not coming to hurt us. We're okay. We're safe.
and you and I both know that's just deep trauma
It
speaking right
is.
there. Just
It is.
almost like denial that it could possibly be over.
And we all had that for months because we would see, a car drive by and be like, okay, is that him?
Mm.
There was times, I had nightmares for a long time that he was still stalking us. um, even
That's
though even though it doesn't make sense, even though we knew we had the funeral, we had all of that, we you just still, your mind still hadn't caught up with everything yet.
well, because that is an entire lifetime of trauma up to that time for all of you. The
Yes.
beatings, the bruises. And you said, was it your maternal grandmother that would talk to you about Jesus?
It was, yes, it was my maternal. When we went to, there would be times when we were little and she was alive that we would get dropped off at her house for safety reasons because things were really bad. So my mom would convince my dad, well, let's just take the girls to my mom's and let them be there. So even though I never attended church with my parents, my grandmother, if we were at her house on Sunday morning, we were expected to go to Sunday school with her every single Sunday. And so um, the church that she went to was a little scary, but the thing that resonates in me and I remember to this day is walking home from church because she couldn't drive. So she only went to the church she could walk to, and it was that church. And she just told me, I said, why do we have to go to this scary church, Grandma? And she was like, you know, God doesn't care how you worship him or where you worship him, just as long as you're worshiping him. So that has stuck with me for my whole entire life.
And do you think that she knew what you all were going through?
I know that she knew, but my grandmother was 4'10" and weighed 90 pounds. She couldn't do anything against my dad. And she did what she knew she could do, and that was love on us and be there for us and take care of us when we were at her house.
And take you to the church and open your, I wonder back, Jesus certainly wasn't spoken in my home that I remember. I've said often, I wasn't from a Christian home. I remember asking my mom a few times when I was very young and saying, could we go to church? And she would make the comment someday when she felt like she had the right clothes, maybe we could go. Or if she felt like we had enough money that she could give, in when they passed around the plate. And that's what she would say. So somewhere way back, I had some knowing of the Lord, and who knows where, because I don't know. We're going to take another short break, and we will be right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And welcome back to The Journey. My guest today is Heather and Simon, and she is telling the story of what she and her family went through with their dad. So, Heather, go ahead and tell us about what happened with your mom after your dad had passed away.
Um, we went through actually two trials, and the first trial was a hung jury. And during this whole time, we actually were very confident. We just felt like people were finally going to hear our story and that they would understand that she was defending her life. Unfortunately, in the second trial, they found her guilty of second degree murder, and she was sentenced to 15 to life, 25 to life in prison. So um, within 2 years, she was sent to prison. And again, all of a sudden now I didn't have a mom and I had to navigate life and, you know, um, going and visiting my mother in prison. And that is an experience in itself.
I'm certain. I'm certain. And again, I'm shocked. I'm disgusted by the fact that the police never helped you. Your entire family was abused, horribly abused by him, and she still went to prison. They
We
didn't
were
even
really
consider
we truly
self.
were shocked. Yes, we were truly shocked, and it was just another one of those things that my sister and I had to be like, okay, well, the system just let us down once again. So it was
Right.
just a continual thing.
And that's what I wanted to say was that's it, is they failed you and your family. You all rightfully, I mean, maybe it's good that you weren't taken out of your home because that would have been probably away from your mother as well. But nothing, no one was protecting you. And that had
No,
to be difficult.
unfortunately, nobody was, and that kind of just added to my determination that, okay, again, nobody's going to come rescue us. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to figure it out. And that was part of, what happened my senior year in attempted suicide, was because my school counselor, nobody was checking to see if I was doing okay, or, asking. And I know now as an adult, it just was, nobody knew what to say to me. This wasn't something
Makes
that they had ever dealt with. And, but I also had a lot of friends, and I had a lot of friends' parents that really stepped up and, were checking on me and making sure I was doing okay.
sense. And no doubt, this is what has made you such a strong woman now. So, with that said, how did you make the journey from the trauma as a child and early teen to where you are today?
Basically, I had to start digging deep. And, again, after the suicide attempt, it was, I wanted to live. How God had intervened on how I even survived. And that was my high school sweetheart, and him calling the police and getting them to go to my house. And that is an amazing story in itself. But it just lit that fire again, that, okay, I can do this. I can just keep going and keep going. So, I got myself in school, and I found a full time job. And I don't think things really changed a lot until I had my oldest son. And that was the journey of, I've got to survive, and I've got to do it for him. And it's my job to protect him and make sure that he never sees anything that I grew up with. And, so I just became a mom and had two boys that I had to raise, and, a marriage and all of that. And it probably wasn't until I was about 40 that I started looking back and going, wait a minute, what happened to my dreams? What happened to, what do I want to do next? Um, I was so worried about hiding my secret. And we had moved from California to Oklahoma, and I didn't want people to know my secret. So, one day I just woke up and started finding that 5-year-old sassy, fierce girl that I was, and was like, okay, wait a minute. And then God just started putting me in places.
Right.
And I was in a meeting up at the state capitol here in Oklahoma, and a bunch of high-powered women in our state were having this meeting and what we can do. Um, and it was specifically about women incarcerated in Oklahoma, because we have a very high rate of that here. And I just stood up and said, "That's not how it works." And everybody's looking at me going, "What?" And I'm going, I don't know. But that just helped me. I just started finding myself being put in situations where I was just speaking up, going, "That's no, that's not," or, "These laws need to change," or, hear about somebody who needs help. How can we get them, that's in domestic violence? How can we get them to get the help that they need? How can we help them get out of the situation that they're in? So honestly, it was just God putting me in the right places at the right time.
And
Um,
that is exactly the deal. I went through some deliverance ministry recently for myself, and because we can go right along and do great for a while, and then find ourselves at a plateau of needing just a little kick in the tail, or in the spirit, or just to go ahead and get through maybe another step of the trauma. And that is what came out of that was, and I know this, and you do too, Heather, the very things like Romans 8:28, I was saying, the very things that happen to us are the very things that God will use to help others out of their own darkness. And so many, you and I both have accepted that call to step up and do exactly what you're doing today. I
and
know.
I have to say, I really didn't start finding my voice until about 10 years ago. My my mother was part of a documentary, and she helped form this group of women that were in prison for the exact same thing she was. They were defending their lives, and they formed a group and helped. And actually, even though they were in prison, they went to the state capitol in California and testified in a hearing to talk about, the injustice that they have experienced and how to change laws. And so that just helped me, like, okay, my mom's talking about this. My mom is making a difference, even though she's in prison. And they got a law that was passed, and then they passed another law that specifically let her out. And she unfortunately passed away in July of 2013.
Mm.
And that bill was going into effect where she could have got out November 1st. And so that just started driving me, like, okay, there's a reason why I've gone through this. I need to share my story. There's no reason for me to be ashamed of my story. My boys already knew the story because they had to learn at an early age why. Um, that they couldn't visit their grandmother. They had the internet, so I had to make sure that they knew things I didn't want them to find out. And also I
Sure.
wanted them to understand their mom a little bit more
Right.
on, they were boys and they got to be teenagers, but they were never allowed to sleep with their doors shut. That was a very big thing. That's a trigger for me. That's a trauma thing. So I could wake up in the middle of the night and know their door is shut, and I just have to go open it just a little bit.
Mhm.
So really, honestly, just God kept putting me in places and saying, okay, here, this is where I'm putting you now. And I would be like, okay, well, here's my story. And just probably about 2 years ago is when I started doing speaking engagements. So I actually now go and speak with doctors and nurses and nursing students and pre-med and psychology students on sharing my life story, because I really want to help change laws. I really I want our police and doctors and nurses that are first responders to do better, to be
No
more
doubt.
aware, to
No
be
doubt.
more understanding of the situation. And understand that because a patient comes in and you suspect something, they're not going to tell you. They're not just going to be, oh yeah, I'm being beat at home. Even a child is not going to. They're not going to say bad things about their parents or think they're going to get their parents in trouble.
Hmm.
So that was my driving force, and just to do better and make sure that my boys never experience what I did, and that I give them a whole different life. And God gave me boys, so I take that very serious, and I knew it was my job to raise them to be the men that God wanted them to be. So
That's so good. And as we have spoken before, in preparation for this podcast today, Heather, and as we're speaking now, I just don't pick up on any bitterness with you. Not that you and I both have gone through our own steps through the emotional trauma, and you went through that physical trauma, and I just am not picking up on bitterness and hatred and anger. Again, not that we never felt any of that, but we're going to take another quick break, and then we will be right back.
thank you.
Mike Zoric, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor.
Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back. Heather, we were just touching on the fact that, I was mentioning the times that we have spoken, and right now I'm just not picking up in the spirit on anything of you being deeply angry or uh, I'm just not picking up on any of that. Talk to me about that.
Um, Honestly, I knew at an early age, and I think it was just before I had my older son, that I needed to forgive him. Because I knew carrying around that hatred and stuff wasn't going to do anything for him. I knew it was me. And then after I had my oldest son, I knew in order to be the best mom that I couldn't carry that around. It wasn't going to serve me any purpose. And so I had to let it go, and I had to just move on and I choose to remember the good times because there was some good times. In my house, it was either really, really bad or really, really good. And
Right.
I just choose to remember the good times. And I would tell my boys growing up about the good times and the vacations and the different things that we took. And my oldest son has even asked me, I don't understand why you're not mad about it, because it doesn't do me any good. And I can't go on and accomplish life in the things
It's
that I want to do.
right.
Right.
It's productive. We've all heard and been told that not forgiving, it keeps us in prison.
Mhm.
For us to be angry, for you to be angry with your dad forever, for me to be angry with my perpetrators, it holds no purpose. It just holds no purpose.
It doesn't. And when my son was about a year old, I had a conversation with my dad's mother and asked her why she didn't do anything.
Mm.
And she even said, I didn't know. And I said, well, you did, but
Mm.
let's put that aside. And I told her that she's like, well, you'll understand now that you have a son. And I was like, I understand less because I have a son. It's my job to raise him to be the man he's going to be. So
She,
I think that definitely helped as well. I was able to forgive her and let it go.
she was in her own denial.
She was very much, even through the trial and all of that, she was very much in her own denial. And,
Didn't you think that your dad was raised by his grandmother?
it was, and it's my understanding that she was great. My older sister remembers her, and she had had a stroke before I was born. But I heard that she was, a really nice, you know, tobacco chewing, whiskey drinking, really cool kind of woman. So somebody I probably would have hung out with.
Well, you and I know we'll probably never know unless God reveals it to you of really what the root of your dad's issues were. You know, I really love just diving deep into human behavior and discerning in the spirit. You know, what was that? No doubt there was just anger and lashing out. You know, maybe he was disappointed with how his life worked out. Maybe he wanted a son, but he had daughters. Maybe we could go on and on. And the same with my, with the person that abused me is why? I mean, did he hate me because I had red hair? Or did he, I mean, on and on I could go of things that I have, chewed over in my head and heart. Like, why did that happen? But again, it goes back to something Wade Burleson and I spoke about in a podcast many weeks ago that I brought up to learn to be content in all things. Because I've said, Paul sitting in prison, chained, he was not guilty of what he was in prison for. And he was able to write in scripture, be content in all things. That's not something everyone can do, but I think it's a lifelong lesson.
I do agree with that. One of the things reason why I talk about things is I don't want, you hear about, well, he was an alcoholic, he was a drug addict, he had a horrible childhood. These are not excuses. When you become an adult, you make your own decisions.
That's
And
right.
my
That's right.
sisters and I made the decision to stop the cycle with us. So we were very mindful of that. We knew that we had to work on that. Um, we were very determined to make sure our boys didn't see what we saw. So
And
it
you did, Heather. You broke that abuse. You broke that abuse. Praise God for that. And
I'm
that's what
very
I know you just remarried this past summer, right?
I did. When you talk about feeling safe in your home, my ex-husband was a wonderful guy. Um, but for the first time in my life, I know what it's like for my soul to be um, happy and safe. And you just don't realize until that first night you sleep through a night and realize how much your body stores up so much trauma. And that's the last 2 years I've been learning about that and how our body stores up trauma. And I've been working on getting that released and just,
I'm doing the same.
again, a total God thing of how we met. And here we are. And we've been married for 6 months now. And everything's just great.
I'm so happy for you. And after everything that you went through and the losses you went through, the choices that you made, Heather, as a traumatized child and teen, but the choices that you made in your lifetime and are still living and walking in this, to not be bitter. We have just a couple of minutes before we end the podcast. Is there anything in a minute that you want to share?
I'm very thankful. I know God has been in my life my whole entire life. I know specific places I can even pick that out. Um, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today. I'm grateful for the opportunity that God has given me to be able to share my story, but my family's story as well. And I'm just thankful that I found my 5-year-old sassy, fierce self again.
Yes, I am too. Well, I am so happy to know you. And thank you for being on the journey today. And thank you for sharing your truth, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And truly, you can get through trauma. Heather and I both are, we're perfect examples of that. We can live a glorious life and have the desires of our heart. So, again, if you are struggling with suicide or in an abusive relationship, things can get better. Choose it. And we will see you next week on the journey.
This has been The Journey with your host, Marlena Compston. Tune in each week as Marlena shares her own journey from childhood trauma. She gives God all the glory for delivering her from the darkness. Her call is to help others heal from their own past, and her passion is to point them to Jesus and his salvation, mercy, and grace. Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.